So as I mentioned before, the last class of disorders are ones where individuals don't recognize that it is that they have a disorder because of the way they're being and their situation, but it's obviously causing distress to the individual, to the way they're being, to their to what they're doing that needs to be addressed. And this is why we call these personality disorders. A personality. So we didn't go through personality section in this class, so I'm just going to really quickly define what the definition of personality is that personality are these dispositional qualities that we have as individuals that make us adaptive to our situation and to our world, and they're long lasting. Okay. So when we talk about personality, if you want to think about this, this is the study of individual differences. What makes you unique to the person sitting next to you is a study of personality. Um, what makes you adaptive and what has made it so that you are who you are today and who you will be tomorrow is the study of personality. And there's different ways that we study personality. There's what we call the trait theory, which right now, if we look at theories on trait, there's the big five personality theory, which is Ocean, OCEAN, which is openness, conscientiousness, extroversion, um, acceptance, and neuroticism. Okay. And each of these personality qualities go on a dimension. So I mentioned extroversion, which is the E. On the other end of extroversion is introversion, someone who is inward, versus extroversion, which is someone is outward, meaning they need social connection. They need to understand things through social means. Introversion, meaning that we need things inwardly. Okay. And so, but there's other ways to understand personality, which is based on our narrative story, where we were raised, how we adapted to our environment, how we became to be who we are, the historical narrative of who we are, because after all, what we are as an individual is a collection of our memories of who we were in the past. Other means is the unconscious level, which we went through with Freud about how unconscious processes force us towards certain adaptive needs. Um, the humanistic perspective that motivates us to be who we are supposed to be, based upon fulfilling our basic needs and then going beyond that. So, personality psychology is a very complex field. There's a reason I don't consider myself a personality psychologist because I think that situational variables are much more reliable in determining people's behavior than individual perspectives. But there are a list of disorders that, based upon a person's individual history, a person's maladaptive abilities to cope, that they can develop different dispositional ways of thinking. And what sets personality disorders aside from any of the other disorders that we've talked about is that they're not necessarily maladaptive to the individual, meaning the individual may not see the harm that they do to other people, the hurt and the pain that they do to other people, um, because they feel that they are in the right. That's their dispositional quality of the way that who they are, that the maladaptiveness is because the pain and the hurt that they do to other people, not necessarily the pain and the hurt that they do to themselves, like what we saw with depression or mood disorders or anxiety disorders. And we can classify personality disorders into three categories or three clusters. Cluster A is where individuals have a distrust of other people, that they don't like other individuals, they don't have a high level of trust. These are individuals who are raised in a very chaotic, changing environment that is not predictable. So on the severe level, and this is what I'm saying, on cluster A, if we look at this, this is a severe individual who from early childhood into infancy, they were changed and traded to other people. There was no consistency in their world. And so in cluster A, we get what's called paranoid, schizoid, or schizotypical personality disorder. This is where, on one level, a person, oh my goodness. I don't know why this is doing this. Hold on, everyone. This is where a person will either distrust other people because they're so paranoid about relationships that they just cannot be involved with anyone that comes into their life. They're paranoid about, they just distrust. Schizoid is where a person avoids relationships. So paranoid, they will allow people to come in and say, okay, let's see what you're about. But the moment they see anything that they distrust, they will avoid. Avoidant relationships, which is schizoid, is that they avoid, they generalize. So they assume that all men are abusers, all women are distressful, everyone in children are not to be trusted. Okay. Schizotype personality disorder is interpersonal deficits, where when it comes to the interaction, so they can get into relationships like the mother-father relationship, friendships, relationships, but they're never trusting of it. So they're always in constant conflict, and that's schizotypical because they're paranoid that this relationship that looks good could become eventually harmful to them. In cluster B, so cluster A is the most extreme. Cluster B is in between. This is where we get the antisocial, the borderline, the histrionic, and the narcissist people, where we get people. So, antisocial personality disorder, and I want to kind of explain this from a developmental perspective. Antisocial personality, the most common trajectory is it starts with a person who doesn't have parents who are consistent in their environment. So they don't um, uh, um, establish a relationship with that primary caregiver. And that is what we call, if we look at it from a clinical perspective in early childhood, that's what we call um, 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 attachment disorder. Attachment disorder is when there's not a lot of trust between the caregiver and the infant and into early childhood. And that creates a dysfunction. And that's what we call attachment child disorder. If not corrected by the age of about 8, for some reason around the age of 8, if attachment disorder is not corrected in some way, and the child cannot have a foundational trusting attachment with a caregiver by about the age of 8, that goes into what is called childhood conduct disorder. This is where we get into the elementary years, the middle school years, and to the high school years, where truancy officers are constantly in that child's life. Okay, and again, without more severe intervention, more pro-social intervention during those early years, if that conduct disorder is not corrected, I'm not going to say corrected, or I'm going to say the word alleviated, where that child can find some trusting environment, then in older years, this is what's going to end up in antisocial personality disorder, where an individual will find a group or groups, plural, that they will give all their hate towards. This is the anti-Semitics. This is the anti-gay people. This is the anti-Black or Mexican people. This is the and they put all their hatred towards that group. And they show that hatred towards that group. This is what antisocial personality disorder evolves into. Hence, when you go into a lot of prison environments, if you go onto the yard, as they call it, you'll find the Mexicans who hate the white people, who hate the Black people, who hate these people. You'll find the Black people who hate the white people, who hate the Mexicans, who hate the other people. And you'll find the white supremacists who hate all of those groups. This is antisocial personality disorder, because they've grown to believe that everything that has gone wrong in their life is because of another group, that they grow such a hatred towards that group that they antisocial against it. And it doesn't have to necessarily do with Black, white, Mexican. It may be cops. It may be the legal system. It may be social economic status. It can be any of those groups, but their hatred goes against that group. Okay. And so that's antisocial. We're going to get to borderline personality here in just a minute. Histrionic personality disorder is when an individual was never taught how to control their emotional feelings. And so in histrionic disorder, it's that I don't know what to do with my emotions, so I let them explode. And I let them just be out there. And I'm angry against everyone, regardless of who they are. That's histrionic. Narcissistic personality is that I gain such mistrust against other people on an unconscious level that the only person I can trust is myself and my own opinions, my own thoughts, my own feelings. And so everything has to center around who I am as an individual. And that's narcissism. Okay. So that's the middle ground for personality disorders. In the other area is more treatable disorders. So if you think about it, cluster A is hard to treat. Cluster B is not much easier than cluster A to treat. It takes a lot of work. These individuals in cluster A are most likely to end up in an inpatient situation. Cluster B, if they're caught and they're diagnosed, they might halfway houses, living centers, maybe independent with large amount of support. When we get to cluster C, these are more treatable personality disorders. And so if we start with cluster A, these are avoidant or dependent personalities. Avoidant is that they've gained mistrust of the world. They have probably been abused or neglected, but they've also been exposed to potential light in the world, that there might be an out. So they're not going to end up in cluster A or cluster B, but they may avoid situations which are healthy for them because they might mistrust those situations. Dependent personality disorder, I'm going to tell you a story about. In my dad's later years, and I'm going to get a little bit personal with his situation, he was eventually diagnosed with dependent personality disorder. And it started from his early adulthood, where his mother, he didn't want to go to school anymore. And in his elementary going to middle school years. And his mother said, "You don't need to go to school anymore." And that mother guarded him against his brothers who came to his house and said, "You need to get your ass out of bed and go to school." Excuse me for my language, but that's the language that was expressed to me in understanding this. And he was guarded by these certain individuals within the family that says, he doesn't need to do this. He doesn't have to do this. He doesn't have to do those things. You have to be sensitive to him. He's a sensitive person. And so he was very guarded in his life. And then into adulthood, that led to relationships that he would depend upon, and he would seek those relationships dry. He would depend on those relationships until those relationships didn't have anything left for them to survive on. And so he would go to the next family member, the next friendship level, the next person that would then seek that relationship dry. And that's dependent personality disorder, is that individual that would go from family member to family member and family member and seek those relationships until they could no longer accept them, and they would push them on to the next family member. Okay. Obsessive compulsive disorder is something I think we probably all have heard about. But these are where people, again, have come from an inconsistent lifestyle, where if things are not done in a very methodical method, then something bad would happen. And so they would then come to obsess about something that is usually something safe, something that we all deal with every day, such as locking a door, turning the water off, um, making sure that the something is shut off or something is taken care of. But these individuals become obsessed about that because that's the only consistent part of their life that they know if it's taken care of, that it won't create chaos in their life. So, OCD or obsessive compulsive personality disorder is something that it seems very irrelevant to most of us. Most of us don't obsess when we leave the house in the morning, whether we locked or unlocked the door. We know it, unless we have a memory disorder, which is a different topic than this. But these individuals have to go back and they have to obsess about it over a period of time before they can move on. Okay. So again, we're moving from cluster A, which is the most severe, B to C, which is most treatable. The disorder that I would like to focus on for tonight is borderline personality disorder. The reason why I am focusing on this disorder for tonight is because it's probably one of the disorders that is most misdiagnosed for some of the other mood or anxiety disorders that we've talked about. So let me present this in a pencil way. And this is so someone with a borderline personality, they start at rock bottom. They build themselves up. And then all of a sudden they feel some type of something and they decompensate. And so they go back to rock bottom. And then they have to build themselves up to a point, and then they hit rock bottom and they go down, up, down, up, down. If you look at this pattern, this looks like bipolar disorder, where a person is going through depressive lows here on the bottom and then manic highs here at the top. Mood lows at the bottom, manic highs at the top. And you see this pattern, okay? And so the reason why I bring this issue up is, again, it's a personality disorder. It evolves out of experience in life, okay? Someone with bipolar disorder, that is organic. It is most likely evolved out of biology, not out of life experience. Okay, so here is the thing that is the difference between personality disorders, such as borderline, and bipolar disorder. Bipolar disorder gets out of these lows and they go to a manic high where they do all these frenzied activities. And then they go back to this low. And in a transitional period, they go back to the high, they go back to the low. They go back to the high and they go back to the low. The difference between bipolar and borderline is that borderline personality disorders, these highs, I'm going to circle them. Let's do a different color. We're going to do it with blue. These highs are associated with success. So a lot of the individuals that I worked with borderline personality disorders were adolescent girls. And so they would go through high school and they would go up to this achievement line. And about 2 to 3 weeks before graduating from high school, which is an achievement, they'd go through this dissociative state where they would crash and they do everything that they could to disrupt that success. They would stop showing up to class. They'd start to drink. They'd start high sexual situations. They would start doing endangering behaviors. They would start home chaos. They would do everything to make sure that this success of high school graduation would not be achieved. And they would crash. And then maybe they would find some success, they would find people, and they'd start building up, they'd start getting in healthy relationships, they would start maybe working towards their GED, they would start doing all of those things. And then they would get to the point where maybe the male would propose to them. Maybe they were getting close to completing their GED. Maybe they were, and then they would go through another manic phase and they would start doing self-destructive behaviors to make it so that they would crash again. Okay. This is borderline personality disorder. It cannot be treated the same way that bipolar is treated. Bipolar is organic. It is something physiological. So it can be treated with medication. Borderline personality disorder cannot be treated through medication. Indeed, medication actually makes the borderline person worse than what they were pre-baseline. Okay, so this is something we need to understand, is that this up manic phase, depressive phase looks very familiar, but this is where I'm going to say, this is where at this phase they'd come into the prison system, and I would say as the clinician, get them off of all of their medications. Let's try them out. Let's get all of the medicines out of their body, and then let's reassess them. And most of the time, those people who came in with borderline, with bipolar diagnoses, actually had borderline personality disorder. They didn't have bipolar disorder. Because this is the issue with borderline versus personality. Borderline versus bipolar. Bipolar is a medical condition. It is something that needs pharmacological medical intervention to be fixed. Borderline is when all of the trauma within a family has been swept under the rug, has not been recognized, has not been stated about, that at this point of success, no one knows this because trauma says that I shouldn't feel good about myself because nothing that I've ever done has ever been recognized. It has never been stated about. It has never been anything. And when I say something about my trauma, people say, oh, get over it. Oh, that never happened. Oh, you're being ridiculous. Oh, don't shame the family. And so when a person gets to this point of actual success, they use those memories and they decompensate for them and they self-destruct. So I'm going to use this video, I think a video that we're going to watch tonight, and I hope it emphasizes this point to let us see what this looks like on at least a mild level. Oh, let me, hold on. I can't remember, hold on. I forgot to turn the sound on. I apologize, everyone.
Cheddar. I set fire to your empire. I blow smoke in your face, burn tires. Yes, I J I
Drinking makes me happy. It makes my blood circulation run faster, making me feel hot and energetic. Clubbing is all about the music, dancing, drinking, and hunting. That is why I love it there. When I wake up in the morning, I like taking photos of the guy who is sleeping next to me. I just think they look so beautiful, and I want to capture that moment.
Been handling Emily's case for about 8 months. The first time I met her, she was a quiet girl, barely spoke to me. Over the first few sessions, I came to learn more about Emily and helped her to explain what she was feeling. Her concerns about loneliness, about not fitting in, not being part of the world that she was living in. And after about 6 sessions of working with Emily, I began to formulate some ideas around the problem. I was beginning to think that we perhaps were working with someone suffering from a borderline personality disorder. The difficulty with long-lasting relationships, this inability to form and retain any sort of relationship, whether it's with a male or female, was a fundamental problem for Emily and is the first starting point for the 9 criteria associated with borderline personality disorder. And we could see in Emily's case this apparent addiction to promiscuity, to alcohol and substance abuse. Another symptom of personality disorder could be seen in an unstable self-image. Emily, like other personality disorder sufferers, had this problem of feeling tremendously empty, of not belonging.
Sometimes I feel so happy, but most of the time I feel sad. It's like I'm alone, empty, hopeless, and in pain. All at the same time. I really don't understand myself.
Borderline personality disorder can occur in any social class, in anyone. You can find that some families have what's referred to as the perfect family syndrome, where issues are brushed under the carpet, not acknowledged. And this builds up through a young person's life and becomes a trauma, a disorder in their normal social functioning. And it was my opinion that this is what was happening to Emily. Further definitions of personality disorder can be seen in unnecessary emotional outbursts, the failure to control one's immediate reactions to a given situation, not applying social skills. And unfortunately, Emily found it incredibly difficult to control these emotional outbursts, which to many of the people around her appear to be totally inappropriate against the situation that they found themselves in.
I try my best to look happy, but I'm dying inside.
In many cases of personality disorder, we can see suicidal tendencies, and in Emily's case, this was manifested by self-harming. Again, not uncommon. Personality disorders can be successfully dealt with. The difficulty is that the healthcare worker, the doctor, the social worker, the consultant has to spend an inordinate amount of time to support the person concerned, to build up a basis of trust and faith that doesn't collapse after a series of interviews, counselling sessions. And in Emily's case, that was what was required. It is possible to achieve 100% success when working with borderline personality disorders, but we can never ignore the commitment and time and requirement necessary to help people suffering from this condition.
world was once only black and white. I was struggling to face the world each day. After a year of therapy, I'm getting better. I found the meaning of life, and I'm starting to see how colorful the world is. I learned how to trust myself and others. Now I have a stable relationship with my boyfriend. I have faith in myself now, although it may take some time. I believe I can totally overcome borderline personality disorder one day.
So many of you probably are asking, why did I end this class with this information, and wondering about what's Dr. Peterson suggesting and I just want to bring this up, that who we are based upon our life experiences. Yes, biology plays a role, and it may influence us to have different disorders like diabetes, depression, anxiety, and all of those disorders. But our life experience also determines how successful we are at meeting those challenges, whether they're biological, social, or psychological. And the thing that we probably should focus on as educated people, which you all are becoming and you all are, is what can we do as an educated community to make sure that people who have suffered through such chaos and such realities, that we don't slip into the mistake of assuming that because we made it through those situations that they should too, because we never lived through their experiences. We never experienced what they went through. And so to assume that because I made it, you should too. And at what point in humanity do we reach out to those who aren't making it, who need that extra lift, who need that extra help, who need that extra push? At what point do we set our own experience aside and allow our education, what we've learned here in college, what you all learned in high school, what you all have learned to this point? When do we say that my experience is not universal, but each individual on this earth deserves this recognition that they're unique, and what they've gone through is not what I have gone through? That each one of you in this class are a special, unique person. And if I were to put my life experience onto you, it would be unfair. And I really want you guys to think about this coming out of Introduction to Psychology, that our lived experiences as individuals should have no bearing on what other people are experiencing in their own lives. And we should have the compassion and the love to be understanding to those who didn't have the experiences that we have had. And so I'm going to leave you with that thought. And I think that's a good thought to leave you all on, because this has been an extremely compassionate class. You've all shown up on times where your professor hasn't been available, and I appreciate that. But I want you all to consider from here going on out from Introduction to Psychology, and I want you to take this with you, that just because you overcame so many things and you're in the place you are in, doesn't make you more or less than anyone else. It should make you more compassionate and allow you to have the heart and the thought and the feeling to say, I don't understand their experiences, but I will learn about it. And I will come to understand it, not based on me, but based on what I have found the most guiding thing in my life, and that's science. And that has been my saving grace. And I'm going to leave you with all that. And I will say that I will post our final quiz. You'll have till next Tuesday to finish it. You'll have up to 3 opportunities. It's not worth as many points as just attending class. But please make sure your name is in the chat. This Wednesday will be an opportunity to you to complete your final, so we won't have a live class. I appreciate every single one of you, and thank you for staying in this class. And I so want to see you in the graduation lines or in the future academic lines, or to call you my colleagues. Take care, everyone. Good night. Take care of yourselves. Take care of your family. Be good. Take care.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Dr. Peterson, for all that you've done for me and have opened my eyes to a lot of new opportunities out there. Thank you.
Thank you.